The winter storm hammered Seattle the night a weary black waitress named Ava Johnson stepped toward a stranger she had never met, a tall, battle-worn former Navy SEAL named Ethan Brooks, quietly slipping a folded note into his hand with trembling fingers. What followed would uncover a criminal operation hiding inside a national restaurant chain, expose a manager who thought he was untouchable, and pull a retired war dog back into the heart of danger. Before we dive in, don't forget to hit that subscribe button, like the video, and tell us in the comments where you're watching from tonight. Your support helps us bring more stories of courage, justice, and unexpected heroes. Trust me, you won't want to miss this one. Now, Chapter 1. Dining in the Snowstorm. Seattle, winter, harsh winds scraping the city like broken glass. The blizzard rolled over Seattle like a white curtain, swallowing every streetlight in a haze of swirling frost. Snow hammered against the windows of Rainhaven Diner, turning them into trembling sheets of ice. Inside, the warmth fought a losing battle against the cold, and the smell of burnt coffee lingered in the air like a tired sigh. Ava Johnson moved between tables with the practiced grace of someone who had no energy left to spare. At 27, she carried the kind of quiet beauty that came from endurance rather than ease. Her skin was a warm espresso tone, smooth and luminous even under harsh fluorescent lights. Tight curls framed her face in a messy bun she had no time to fix properly. Her eyes, deep brown, always watchful, held exhaustion buried beneath layers of forced calm. She was slender, but not fragile. Her posture had the resilient tension of a woman who had learned to carry both trays and burdens heavier than anyone knew. She was also the mother of a 7-year-old boy waiting at home, a little boy she fought for every single day. Rainhaven Diner, once known for its cozy booths and friendly atmosphere, now felt like a place suffocating under invisible weight. Tips had been disappearing from the pool, shifts were cut without warning, and the new manager, Victor Hale, had a way of making every employee feel like prey. Ava balanced 3 plates on her arm as she forced a smile for a couple huddled at a window booth. Her hands trembled slightly, not from the cold, but from dread. She had learned to hide fear the way other people learn to breathe. Then the bell over the door chimed. A gust of icy wind swept in, followed by a man and a dog. The man stepped inside first, stamping snow from his boots. He was tall, easily over 6 feet, with broad shoulders that strained against a weather-worn jacket. His hair was dark brown, cut short, with that slightly uneven look of someone who preferred practicality over style. A short, neatly trimmed beard framed a jaw that looked carved from granite. His eyes, a startling steel blue, scanned the diner with the alertness of someone who never really stopped being on duty. His name, as Ava would soon learn, was Ethan Brooks, 34, former Navy SEAL, and the kind of man who carried a quiet storm everywhere he went. Beside him walked Coda, a 5-year-old German shepherd with a dense coat of black and tan fur and intelligent amber eyes that missed absolutely nothing. His posture was disciplined, tail low, ears alert, every inch of him radiating calm, trained danger. Ava sensed immediately that these two were different, not just strangers waiting out a storm, but souls carved by battles she could only imagine. Ethan chose a corner booth, letting Coda curl at his feet. Ava approached with her notepad, trying to steady her voice. "Coffee?" she offered. Ethan looked up, and for a brief moment, Ava felt seen, not by a customer, not by a man, but by someone who recognized the exhaustion she tried so hard to bury. He nodded. "Yes, ma'am. Coffee would be great." Something about the soft respect in his tone made her chest tighten. She poured the coffee, noticing the faded Navy SEAL patch sewn inside his coat. Pride flickered across her face. "You served?" she asked gently. He nodded once. "Feels like a lifetime ago." They exchanged only a few words, but the warmth in his voice chipped away at the freezing cold inside her. But then she felt it, that prickling at the back of her neck. Victor Hale was watching. He stood near the kitchen doorway, tapping his phone impatiently. Tall, mid-40s, icy blonde hair slicked back with the precision of a man who desperately needed control. His face was sharply angled, handsome in the way a knife was handsome. His eyes, pale, calculating, had the uncanny ability to make Ava feel small even from across the room. She turned away quickly, but Ethan noticed. He always noticed. Ava returned to his table with the check, her hand shaking slightly. And in that moment, driven by a courage she didn't even know she still had, She slid a tiny folded note beneath the receipt. A desperate act. A silent scream for help. Ethan unfolded it when she walked away. Her handwriting was shaky, urgent. Please help us. The manager is doing terrible things. He watches me. Don't call the police. He has people inside. Ethan lifted his gaze slowly. Ava stood across the room, pretending to wipe a table, but her shoulders were stiff, her breath uneven. She didn't dare look at him, yet the fear trembling through her body was unmistakable. Coda's ears rose sharply. A low growl rumbled in his throat. Then the back door slammed open. Victor stepped out, phone in hand, eyes cold as winter steel. "Ava," he barked. "Office, now. We need to talk." The diner went silent. Ava froze. The color drained from her face. Ethan's jaw tightened. Coda rose to his feet, hackles raised. Ava unfastened her apron with shaking fingers and walked toward the dim hallway leading to the manager's office. She hesitated at the doorway, casting one fleeting look at Ethan, as if silently begging him not to leave. The door shut behind her. A second later, a muffled cry sounded, followed by the crash of something heavy hitting the floor. Ethan stood up instantly. Coda growled, sharp and fierce. Someone inside that hallway was in danger, and Ethan Brooks no longer cared about staying out of trouble. Chapter 2. Signs of Conspiracy. The hallway was dim, lit only by a flickering fluorescent bulb that buzzed like an irritated wasp. Ethan moved fast, his boots hitting the worn linoleum floor with heavy purpose. Coda stayed glued to his side, tail rigid, hackles raised, every muscle tuned to danger. Halfway down the hall, Ethan saw Victor Hale walking away, long strides, shoulders stiff with agitation. Victor locked the office door behind him, slipping the key into the pocket of his tailored gray slacks. He didn't notice Ethan in the shadows, but the smirk lingering on his pale lips told Ethan one thing. Victor believed he had already won. The manager disappeared around the corner, leaving behind only the faint scent of sharp cologne and something darker, fear left behind by the victim he had just intimidated. Ethan reached the locked door, jaw tight. Years of breaching hostile rooms in foreign countries had taught him how to stay calm, but the muffled whimper on the other side of the door made his pulse spike. Coda let out a low, urgent growl. Ethan forced the lock with a swift shoulder strike. The door crashed open. Ava Johnson sat on the floor, wrists crudely bound with kitchen twine, a dish towel tied around her mouth. Her curls were shaken loose from the bun, cascading over her face in frightened spirals. Her breathing was shallow, but her eyes, wide, glassy, terrified, focused instantly on Ethan. He knelt, cutting the restraints with the serrated edge of his pocket knife. Coda pressed his warm body gently against Ava's leg. Tail lowered, offering silent reassurance. When the gag came off, Ava gasped sharply, rubbing her aching wrists. "Thank you," she whispered, voice cracking like thin ice. Ethan didn't touch her shoulders, but his voice softened. "Take your time. You're safe for now." Ava closed her eyes, pulling in shaky breaths until the trembling eased enough for her to speak. Then the dam broke. She told him everything. Victor Hale wasn't just a tyrant with a temper. He was running a coordinated operation inside Rainhaven Diner. 2 employees, Derek Mills, a thin, anxious man in his late 20s with patchy facial hair, and Rosa Velasquez, a stocky woman in her 40s with coarse black hair and a scar down her wrist, were siphoning off goods through the back door. According to Ava, Victor used the restaurant for moving stolen electronics, fake invoices, and cash laundering. And he said, Ava swallowed hard, "He said he knows where my son goes to school." Fear filled her voice like poison. Ethan felt a cold, old emotion rising, the same one that used to hit him moments before breaching enemy safe houses overseas. Protectiveness, controlled fury. He nodded once, a silent vow anchoring itself inside him. Coda suddenly stiffened, his nose pressed against a small metal cabinet in the corner. Ethan opened it slowly. Inside was a cloth pouch of cash, rolled bills stacked tightly, alongside folders filled with falsified invoices and shipping receipts. More evidence than he expected. Ava's voice dropped to a whisper. "He hides things everywhere. He thinks no one will ever stop him because his cousin works in the Seattle Police Department." A beat. And he's right. Everyone who tried to complain was shut down. Ethan exhaled a slow, icy breath. Corruption in law enforcement. That complicated everything. He tucked the folders under his coat. "We're not going through the police first," he said. "We build the evidence properly. We stay smart." Ava stared at him, her eyes searching his face for something. Certainty, hope, maybe salvation. "Why are you doing this?" she asked softly. Ethan hesitated. He didn't want to explain that a year ago, overseas, he had failed to save a civilian woman trapped in a similar situation. He didn't want to explain the nightmares that clawed at him. He didn't want to admit that seeing Ava's fear had awakened a vow he thought he had buried with his uniform. Instead, he said simply, "Because no one should face this alone." Ava's lips trembled, but a hint of relief slipped through. They slipped out the back door of the diner into the swirling storm. The wind hit them instantly, violent. Snowflakes clung to Ava's eyelashes. Coda lowered his head against the gusts, pushing forward with determined steps. The city was quieter than usual, streets blanketed in white, trees bending under the weight of winter. Their breath rose in foggy spirals as they walked. Ava clutched her coat tightly. "I'll take notes on everything he does," she said. "Dates, times, people involved, anything that could help." "You won't be alone in this," Ethan replied. For a moment, they walked in silence, listening to the howl of the wind. Then Ava stopped. She turned to Ethan, her face pale as the snow around them. "Ethan," her voice was barely audible. "Victor knows you saw the note." Ethan froze. Coda turned sharply, ears pricked, nose in the air, sensing something Ethan hadn't noticed yet. A car engine somewhere in the whiteout, a shadow moving behind a street lamp, a feeling, cold, precise, of being watched. Ethan felt it too. The hunt had already begun. Chapter 3. Storm in the dark. Night fell early over Seattle, as if the sky itself wanted to hide from the storm that clawed at the city. Snow pushed against buildings, rattled loose shutters, and swallowed every sound beneath its icy blanket. Ethan moved through the shadows, with Coda at his heel, their breaths forming ghostly clouds in the frigid darkness. For the past several nights, they had tracked Victor Hale's suspicious deliveries, small trucks arriving at odd hours, boxes labeled kitchen supplies, despite weighing far too much, and men with cautious eyes who never stayed long. Ethan's instincts sharpened with each observation. Years as a Navy SEAL had trained him to see patterns in chaos, and the pattern here was unmistakably criminal. Tonight, Coda picked up a scent the moment they approached the loading bay behind Rainhaven Diner. The German Shepherd lowered his head, nostrils flaring, tail straight like an arrow. His coat, thick black and tan, bristled with warning. "What is it, boy?" Ethan whispered. Coda pressed his nose against a large cardboard crate. Ethan listened. There was no movement, no ticking, no mechanical sound. But when he cut open a small flap with his knife and shined a tiny flashlight inside, he saw the unmistakable shape of metal components. Not kitchen supplies. Weapons. Smuggled, unregistered, dangerous. Ethan let the flap fall closed, his chest tightening. This wasn't petty corruption. This was federal-level crime. Meanwhile, Ava Johnson was living in a world where every glance over her shoulder felt like a countdown. Victor's suspicion had turned into something colder and more predatory. She noticed him watching her during shifts, lingering too long behind her at the counter, his pale eyes tracing her movements with malicious patience. She tried to play it calm, but her dread grew heavier by the hour. One night, while carrying groceries up the narrow stairs of her apartment building, an aging complex with peeling paint and flickering hallway lights, she felt it again. A presence. Someone following. Her breath stopped. She turned, and Victor Hale stepped out of the shadows. His face was illuminated by the dim yellow light, sharp cheekbones, lips curled in a mocking smirk, eyes glinting with the satisfaction of a predator cornering its prey. "You're out late," Victor said, voice smooth like cold oil. "Busy night?" Ava hugged the grocery bag to her chest. "Leave me alone." Victor stepped closer, close enough that she could smell his cologne, metallic and bitter. "I think we need to have a little talk," he whispered. Before he could say more, a deep, vicious growl erupted at the end of the hallway. "Coda." The dog burst forward, fur standing on end, teeth bared in a threat that froze Victor in place. A split second later, Ethan appeared behind Coda, expression carved with fury and calculation. Victor retreated immediately, hands up in fake surrender. "This isn't over," he hissed before slipping down the stairs and vanishing into the icy night. Ava's knees nearly buckled. Ethan caught her gently, his strong hands steadying her. "You're safe," he murmured. "You're not alone." Under the hallway's flickering light, something shifted inside her chest. A small piece of the fear cracked, allowing warmth to slip through. Later that night, Ava invited Ethan inside her apartment. Humble, small, but filled with tiny touches of home. Children's drawings taped to the fridge, a secondhand couch covered with a woven blanket, and a photo of her 7-year-old boy, Micah, smiling with gaps in his teeth. Over hot tea, Ethan finally told her the truth about his past. He spoke quietly, each word carrying the weight of years. About the mission overseas, classified terrain, hostile forces, where he lost 3 teammates, including his closest friend. About the guilt that chased him into every dream since. About how he returned home with medals but felt empty inside. Ava listened, her eyes softening with compassion. Then she shared her own wounds, a childhood marked by poverty, a relationship that abandoned her the moment she became pregnant, and years of enduring men like Victor who believed they could break her spirit. Their stories stitched them together like 2 torn fabrics finally finding a matching seam. Outside the window, the storm raged on, but inside they found a fragile pocket of warmth. The next day at the diner, Victor's movements grew sharper, more frantic. He barked orders at staff, checked the back hall every few minutes, and kept whispering to Derek and Rosa. Something was happening, something big. At 10:43 p.m., Ava's phone buzzed in her apron. A text from an unknown number. Mandatory staff meeting at 11 p.m. Come alone. V. She knew instantly it wasn't a meeting. It was a trap, a cover, a way to move the largest shipment yet. Ava's heart raced as she slipped out the back door and into the snowy alley behind the diner. Ethan waited there, leaning against a brick wall dusted with frost. Coda sitting at his feet like a statue carved from vigilance. She told him everything. Ethan's expression hardened. "This is it," he said. "The shipment he's been preparing for." "What do we do?" Ava asked, voice trembling. Ethan fastened his black winter jacket, adjusting the silent tactical gear he always carried out of old habit. Coda stood up, alert. "We go in," Ethan said. "We get the evidence. Tonight." Ava swallowed, fear and hope battling in her chest. The storm howled above them, swallowing their breath and sealing the path ahead. They stepped toward the diner together, into the darkness, into the heart of the danger. Chapter 4. Battle. In the snowy night, snow hammered the metal roof of the storage warehouse behind Rainhaven Diner, each gust of wind slashing across the parking lot like icy blades. The entire area glowed under harsh industrial floodlights, unnatural brightness slicing through the storm. The truck backed into the loading dock, hummed with the low growl of a diesel engine left idling, exhaust drifting into the night like a sinister fog. Ava Johnson crouched behind a stack of pallets, her breath trembling in shallow bursts. Her fingers were numb from the cold, but the phone in her hand kept recording. She zoomed in on Victor Hale and his 2 accomplices, Derek Mills and Rosa Velasquez, moving heavy crates from the truck bed to the warehouse floor. The crates bore labels of restaurant equipment, but Ava knew better now. She had seen the metal shapes within. Weapons. Dozens of them. Her heart pounded violently. Every few seconds she looked toward the back door, scanning for Ethan. He wasn't there yet. "Come on. Where are you?" she whispered. But the whisper carried farther than she intended. A flashlight beam sliced through the shadows. Derek's voice cracked the silence. "Someone's back here!" Ava bolted, but she wasn't fast enough. Victor lunged forward with alarming speed for a man in his 40s, grabbing her wrist and slamming her against a stack of crates. His face twisted into a cruel, triumphant smile. His blonde hair, slicked back with gel, gleamed under the warehouse lights. His pale skin flushed with rage. His eyes, ice cold and vicious, glared down at her with a predator's delight. "Well," Victor hissed, ripping the phone from her hand, "I was wondering when you'd finally slip." Ava struggled, but Rosa, what's his name? Short, muscular, with a square jaw and thick arms hardened from years of warehouse work, grabbed a roll of duct tape and bound Ava's wrists. Derek tied her ankles with a dirty rope, his nervous hands shaking. He always looked sickly in the fluorescent lights, with his uneven stubble, sunken cheeks, and darting eyes, like a man trapped too deep to climb back out. Victor shoved Ava onto a metal chair and tied her to it. "You should have kept your pretty mouth shut," he growled. "But don't worry, by sunrise this will all be cleaned up." Ava's heartbeat thundered inside her ribs. "Please, don't do this," she whispered. Victor leaned in close enough for her to smell the metallic scent of his cologne. "I warned you, Ava, but you made your choice." In the darkness outside, Ethan Brooks approached silently, keeping low to the snowy ground. Coda stayed ahead by a few feet, his nose twitching, his eyes sharp with the instincts of a trained warrior. The dog paused, ears tilting forward. Ethan moved closer. Inside the warehouse, Victor's voice echoed. Coda's fur bristled. Ethan's stomach dropped. Ava was in there. He slipped through the side door, a small emergency exit that had rusted from years of neglect. The hinges groaned faintly, but the storm masked the sound. Ethan squeezed through the narrow entrance, sticking to the shadows, years of tactical training guiding his breath and footsteps. Coda crept ahead, silent as a shadow. From behind a tall rack of boxes, Ethan saw her, Ava, tied to a chair, terror shaking her entire body. Victor stood in front of her, gesturing angrily at Derek and Rosa. Ethan's jaw clenched so hard his teeth ached, but he couldn't rush, not yet. Not until he positioned himself between Ava and the gun Victor inevitably carried. He gave Coda a hand signal, silent, precise. Coda crouched, ready. Victor turned and saw movement. "You!" he roared. "I knew it!" He yanked a handgun from his waistband and aimed directly at Ethan. Ethan dove behind the nearest shelving unit, metal rattling against his shoulder. The gunshot boomed through the warehouse, hitting a crate above his head. "Get him!" Victor shouted. Derek sprinted toward Ethan, but Coda moved faster. The German Shepherd launched forward with terrifying force, jaws locking onto Derek's forearm. Derek screamed and dropped the pipe he was holding. Coda held him down, teeth bared, snarling. Rosa grabbed a metal wrench and swung. Ava kicked the shelving with all her strength, tipping a row of boxes. The loud crash startled Rosa, giving Ethan the second he needed. He lunged, tackling Victor from the side. The gun clattered across the concrete floor. Victor clawed at Ethan's face, but Ethan's strength, honed through years of war, overpowered him. He twisted Victor's arm back, pinning him. Victor screamed in rage. "You ruined everything!" Ethan didn't respond. He pushed Victor face first into the floor and held him there. Blue and red lights exploded through the warehouse windows. The doors burst open. Federal agents stormed inside, men and women in tactical uniforms, weapons raised, voices shouting commands. Ethan had called them earlier, but never expected them to arrive this fast. Snow swirled into the warehouse as agents spread out, securing the area. Victor, Derek, and Rosa were handcuffed and dragged away. The moment Ethan knew Ava was safe, his strength faltered, just slightly. He rushed to her chair, cutting the tape with trembling hands. When Ava was finally free, she collapsed into his arms, sobbing. He wrapped his arms around her, holding her tightly, his breath warm against her hair. "It's over," Ethan whispered. "You're safe. I've got you." Coda approached, gently placing his head on Ava's knee, amber eyes filled with soft reassurance. For the first time in weeks, Ava let herself breathe, really breathe. The storm outside raged on, but inside the warehouse, a different kind of storm had finally come to an end. Chapter 5. When Winter Finally Lets Go. The storm had passed, but Seattle still wore winter like a heavy coat that refused to come off. Snow clung to rooftops, icicles hung like crystal daggers from fire escapes, and the streets glimmered under pale morning sunlight. Yet inside Rainhaven Diner, the air felt warmer than it had in months. The diner reopened under federal oversight, the crime scene tape removed, the shadows Victor Hale left behind slowly fading. A new general manager had arrived, a woman named Margaret Fields, sent from the corporate office to stabilize the chaos. She was in her early 50s, tall and strong-boned, with silver-streaked chestnut hair worn in a neat bun. Her dark brown eyes were steady and calm, and her bearing had the quiet authority of someone who had run restaurants her entire life. Her warm, low voice reassured the staff as she moved through the diner, noting repairs, updating schedules, treating each worker like a person rather than a number. Margaret took one look at Ava Johnson and said, "You've been holding this place together far longer than anyone realized." Her smile was genuine. "Let me help you hold it a little longer." It was the first time Ava felt truly valued since she had started working there. Ava returned to work part-time while the investigation continued. Though her wrists still carried faint red marks from the duct tape, her spirit felt lighter. She walked with steadier steps. Her curls bounced freely around her face, no longer forced into a tight bun out of anxiety. Even her eyes, still soft brown, still watchful, held a spark of hope that had been missing for years. Coda, of course, had become something of a local hero. Customers often bent down to greet him as he lay calmly near Ethan's feet, his thick fur glowing in the warm diner lights. Children giggled and whispered about the brave warrior dog, and Coda accepted their awe with dignified patience. Ethan Brooks sat in his usual corner booth, sipping a mug of hot coffee. His beard was slightly longer now, stitched with frost when he walked in each morning, but his eyes looked clearer, less haunted. He had been offered a temporary role as a security consultant for the chain, and though he accepted the work, he stayed close to Rainhaven Diner for one reason alone: Ava. Today she emerged from the kitchen carrying a tray of fresh pastries. When she spotted Ethan, her steps slowed involuntarily. Her heart warmed in a way she could no longer deny. "Morning," she said as she approached. "Morning," Ethan replied, his voice soft, steady. "How are you feeling?" Ava set the tray on the counter and exhaled. Lighter, stronger, like winter might finally let go. Coda nudged her leg gently, tail thumping once. She smiled. "You too, buddy." But the healing wasn't only hers. Later that day, as snow drifted lazily past the diner windows, Ava found Ethan standing outside, staring toward the street with an expression she rarely saw: quiet vulnerability. "You okay?" she asked, stepping beside him. Ethan nodded slowly. "Just thinking. Haven't felt this calm in a long time." He hesitated, then added, "You and Coda helped more than you know." Ava turned to him fully. The cold air painted her cheeks with a gentle blush. "I think we saved each other." Before Ethan could answer, a young boy with a bright red jacket and a gap-toothed grin sprinted across the snowy sidewalk and leapt into Ava's arms. "Mom!" he yelled, laughing. "Mrs. Fields gave me the day off school because of the snow." Ava laughed and hugged him tightly. "Micah, baby, say hi to Mr. Ethan." Micah Johnson, 7 years old, wiry and energetic, with warm brown skin and expressive eyes, turned toward Ethan. His smile was immediate and unafraid. "Hi, sir," he chirped. Then he looked down at Coda. "And hi, doggy warrior hero." Coda barked once, proudly. Ethan crouched down to Micah's height. "Hey there, buddy." Micah's eyes sparkled with admiration. "Mom says you saved her, and Coda saved her too." Ethan's chest tightened. "Your mom is the brave one. She stood up to a bad man even when she was scared." Micah considered this seriously, then reached out to pet Coda's head. "You can come to my basketball game when the snow melts," he declared. "Mom says we need more good people around." Ava's eyes widened slightly at her son's boldness, but Ethan smiled, gently, gratefully. "I'd like that," he said. Micah grinned and ran into the diner, leaving them alone in the falling snow. Ava looked up at Ethan, her breath visible between them. "He likes you," she said softly. Ethan swallowed, the weight of her words settling into his chest with startling warmth. "I like him too." Snowflakes drifted between them like slow, soft confessions. Ava reached out instinctively and touched the back of his hand. Hesitant at first, then with growing certainty. Ethan didn't move away. Coda sat between them like a silent witness, tail sweeping the snow. Ava whispered, "If you want, there's room in our life for you, for both of you." Ethan's breath caught. He had spent years learning to survive storms, physical, emotional, invisible, but for the first time in a long time, he felt something close to spring, and when he finally spoke, his voice was steady. "I'd like to be part of that." Coda barked softly, as if approving. The wind eased, the snow lightened, and winter, stubborn and cold, finally began to let go. In the quiet after every storm, there is a moment when the world feels still, a moment when we finally see the miracles hidden in the ordinary, a mother's courage, a soldier's return to grace, a loyal dog standing guard like an angel with 4 paws. And sometimes, when darkness surrounds us, God sends us the right people at exactly the right time, not with thunder, not with trumpets, but with small, quiet acts of courage that change the course of a life. If this story touched your heart in any way, let it be a reminder that miracles still walk beside us, in kindness, in protection, in second chances. May God bless every person watching today. May He walk with you through your battles, lift you through your storms, and place the right people in your path, just like He did for Ava, Ethan, and little Micah. If this story moved you, please share it with someone who needs hope tonight. Leave a comment, click like, and don't forget to subscribe to the channel. And may the Lord's grace follow you and your family wherever you go. Amen.